So, do the women deserve to main event WrestleMania 35 this year? Well, according to Stephanie McMahon, she said, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to the review space, and in this video, I want to discuss this potential, this possibility, big possibility, that the female wrestlers, the women, will main event WrestleMania this year, and for the first time ever in WWE history, in Mania history. And so Stephanie McMahon gave out an interview. She spoke with The National. This is according to WrestlingInc.com. WWE Chief Brand Officer Stephanie, she spoke with The National while in Abu Dhabi for the beginning of the 2019 Special Olympic World Games. And she was asked about the women's division possibly main eventing Mania 35 with Becky Lynch against Charlotte and Ronda Rousey. And this is what she basically had to say. So, this is her quote: "It would mean more to me than I could describe for our women to be the main event at WrestleMania. Charlotte, Ronda, and Becky could do it this year. There is so much momentum behind the story. They are so incredibly talented. I know that they would deliver. But I will say is that I hope it is the first of many." Wow. I hope it's the first of many, and it would mean more to me. It would mean more to her, to Stephanie, than I could describe for our women to be the main event at WrestleMania. So, obviously Stephanie is behind this. She's, what I mean by behind is she supports the idea of the female wrestlers main eventing WrestleMania for the first time ever, and not just the first time, but many times in the future, in future WrestleManias to come. Stephanie often gets criticized, especially by some fans, that she's the one who's kind of pushing the women. She's the one who's behind this, for a lack of a better word, this kind of feminist agenda in the WWE. This females that are always getting pushed now, and they're even kind of replacing men in the main events. There's a larger focus on the female wrestlers. There's a bigger focus on the women's wrestlers, and a lot of the the Divas Revolution and the Women's Revolution. It's largely because of Stephanie, and she's the one who's kind of made it an agenda or some kind of forced push to put the women in front of the men, put the female wrestlers ahead of the men. And so she gets criticized by some fans. I'm not sure about that. I have absolutely no clue what her actual responsibilities are regarding this, regarding the company. I'm not entirely sure exactly what she's responsible for, because I don't keep track of her role in the company. I'm sure it's a very powerful position. I mean, she's the chief brand officer, and one day, maybe in the future, she'll end up taking over the company after Vince McMahon is gone. Her along with Triple H, and they can kind of be both in charge of the company. I would largely suspect that, yes, I would probably say that Stephanie has a big part in pushing the female wrestlers, just because obviously she's a woman and she's somebody that can understand what it's like, and to kind of be a female performer and wanting to push certain stars out there that has talent, regardless of gender, and kind of placate to that women's rights and all that, and just kind of have it be a good PR campaign for the company. If anything else, Stephanie has her mentality is that WWE should be doing charity work, and they should be working with sick kids, and they should be working with philanthropy. I think she had a quote, I think a long time ago. It's like philanthropy is the future of marketing, or something like that. So it's doing these little things, these I guess you would consider it like sort of a pseudo SJW movements of pushing the women ahead of the men, or having kind of a feminist approach to wrestling, where the male wrestlers can get slapped around by Stephanie or the other women. Even Becky Lynch earlier this year, when she completely slapped Triple H across the face, and he didn't do anything. So the men can't even fight back. They can't hit back against the women. You know what I'm saying? So you can't have male on female attacks or anything like that, any kind of physical aggression for the most part. And it's like, that's a part of WWE's approach to wrestling now. Back in the day, in the late 90s, early 2K, the Attitude Era, I mean, they would take the women, they would give them power bombs, sometimes power bomb through a table. They would take an older woman, an old lady, like, fabulous. I think Mae Young was the one. Maybe Moolah did also take some bombs, but Moolah and Mae Young, they would take Mae Young, and then I think it was one of the Dudley boys. It might have been Bully Ray, Bubba Ray Dudley. He would power bomb her through the table. You know what I'm saying? So it was a very entertaining product because the women could also be involved in the action. They could also get, the men would do their thing too. They would now sometimes even back in the day they would have China. China would do her thing, and she would kind of be this powerful woman that would kind of dominate a little bit of the guys. Just be as physically convincing as the male. She would put her hands on Mark Henry. She would put her hands on the other male wrestlers sometimes, and they would look very convincing. But China was kind of a different story. She was a very muscular female, and she was a pretty tall girl too, so she looked physically imposing anyway. But the other women, like I'm trying to think of like the more feminine, traditionally feminine looking divas that's smaller than the men. A lot more life looking and a lot more fragile looking. A lot less imposing. Somebody like a Trish Stratus, or somebody like a Lita even, or somebody like Molly Holly. These smaller chicks that would, I guess it would just look kind of bullish. It looked kind of maybe off-putting to some people. That, oh my gosh, you have a 6'3" big male wrestler at power bombing or giving this woman a pile driver, and it's like, oh my goodness, like that looks really brutal and graphic and very kind of domineering and kind of upsetting to some people. But man, first of all, I mean, it's fake wrestling. This is a fake business. This is just scripted. It's a scripted stunt show. So it's not real. It's not real. Obviously, it's not real moves being done. They're not really getting damaged or injured or hurt or anything like that. But I guess because of the message that kind of invokes it. But man, it's just entertainment. You know what I'm saying? The whole male on female attacks and all that, male on female action, in-ring action, where they would do actual wrestling moves on the women, and vice versa, I don't really have a problem with it. You know what I'm saying? I have no problem with it. I don't think it's an issue. I don't think it's a problem. I don't think it's a big deal. But because WWE has changed so much, WWE has become super PC. They've become super almost like an SJW company where they just cater to, like, we can't offend anybody. For the most part, we can't say anything or do anything that their sponsors or their advertisers might fear, like it's presenting a very off-putting product or very upsetting product that might upset women's rights groups or GLAAD or something like that, or anything that that would cause some kind of outrage in the mainstream media. Something that would give them bad publicity, bad negative press. So for the most part, they try to avoid that stuff for a long time, ever since they turned PG. And so Stephanie McMahon, I think, she's also a part of this women's rights thing, this women's, for lack of a better word, women's empowerment thing. Or at least she's kind of been the forefront of that. She's become the face of like the female division in some way. She's become like I'm responsible, or I'm one of the key drivers in the female division. I'm one of the key drivers in the women's division. Being more improved and being more focused upon. So I think that in a lot of ways, Steph, she's taken that credit, and she's kind of been the head, the face of that women's movement. And so I can understand where she's coming from and wanting the women to main event Mania. And to her credit, I think that Ronda Rousey has brought a lot of she's brought that mainstream big celebrity name factor to WWE by being a part of WWE, by being the Raw Women's Champion. She's become that credible champion who has a legitimate athletic MMA background, and they basically built the women's division around her, and they fed her everybody. They fed her just about every female on the roster, on the Raw roster. You know what I'm saying? So she's a very I think overall her run in WWE has been a success. Even if, let's say that Ronda Rousey doesn't ever go back to WWE, which I think that someday I think that she will come back to the business. She'll go back to WWE someday, after she's taken some time off. But even if she quits it permanently and she doesn't go back to wrestling, she doesn't go back to WWE, I think that Ronda Rousey has had a really, really solid year. I think that 2018 belonged to her as probably the top women's wrestler of 2018, and the first half of 2019. Although I guess you could argue that Becky Lynch is technically or currently the most buzzed about woman. She's the biggest female wrestler, the actual an actual wrestling personality that came from NXT and came from the Indies or whatever, and there was a homegrown WWE star that became an actual star on her own, instead of having an MMA big name come in and just kind of live off her past glory in MMA. So you could say that 2019 overall I think will go to Becky Lynch, but 2018 and I think the first couple of months of 2019 really belongs to Ronda, especially her turning heel and becoming a villain, a bad guy. She's become a really solid heel character, and so she's putting in a lot of great work. We're seeing the best of Ronda right now with this heel, pretentious, elitist. I'm better, I'm real. Everybody else is fake. I'm better than you, Ronda Rousey. But as far as main eventing WrestleMania and replacing the men, I'm sure some people don't like it. Some guys would prefer seeing actual male wrestlers and performers. And I think to the men's credit, overall, men in general they're a lot more athletic and they're better performers when it comes to athleticism. And that goes for just about any other sport out there. Not just a professional wrestling that's very physical, but actual competition, actual sports or athletic events like UFC, combat sports like boxing, something like the Olympics. We're talking about actual track and field, that kind of thing, where men perform a lot better physically. They achieve better results. They achieve much higher statistics. They end up, because men are just overall just better athletes. Men are built stronger. Men are biologically born stronger. That's just the way that men are biologically over women, because that's the big difference between male and female, is that men they have, we have muscle mass and strength and just a lot stronger individuals compared to the female counterpart. Obviously not that women can't be athletic and have their own athleticism, but men overall, the NBA is way more impressive than the WNBA, and thus more people are a lot more invested and interested in the NBA. In other male sports or sports that's where men do much better than the women, something like hockey. The NHL is big. Male hockey players. That's the people. That's the best hockey players are male hockey players. Not that many people care about women's hockey. You know what I'm saying? Or women's soccer or women's baseball or anything like that. I'm not even sure if there's even a female football league like you got the NFL, which is obviously male dominated, and then I'm not even sure if there's a female football division, like a female version of the NFL. I don't think that's not even really a thing. So overall, men are just superior athletes, and that's just the way that biology is. I don't think that's sexist or anything like that. That's not offensive or anything like that. I don't think that's not a bad thing. That's just the huge differences between male and female. And so when you compare male wrestlers, even something in such a scripted or fake business like professional wrestling, men have accomplished obviously a lot more because it's a male-dominated business, and male wrestlers have been the top draws, the biggest draws, the biggest personalities, the biggest stars since the beginning of the business. Every now and then you'll have a female that will do her thing, that will become a star in her own right, kind of a big star, a big draw in the business. Something like, for example, Sable back in the Attitude Era when she was doing Playboy, and she was this beautiful blonde bombshell, very, very attractive. and the guys went crazy for her. You know, she was a big top star in the late '90s, and so, you know, there are every now and then you'll have a woman that's like really really good, a really great performer, like Alexa Bliss, for example, or Trish Stratus, or Lita, or somebody like an Asuka, or a Charlotte, or a Becky Lynch. You know, so every now and then you'll have some really great female stars, but overall, obviously, men are the ones who tend to dominate because it's a masculine sport, a masculine business, and very very the moves are very athletic. You know, it requires a lot of athleticism, and just a lot of men want to see. They want to watch other male wrestlers just become, you know, play out this really cool thing. It's kind of like with it's weird because wrestling is not a legitimate sport. It's not like the NFL or the NBA or NHL or male boxing or male UFC, male-dominated UFC, where male athletes can't compete with the women. They're not allowed to compete against the women, and the women can't compete against the men, and vice versa, because you can't put a woman in the same group as men. The men would just absolutely wreck and dominate the women. You know, they're two very separate athletic performers. You know, they're very separate leagues. You know, the males are way above the women in terms of actual sports. You know, NBA guys, like male NBA players, would absolutely dominate over female WNBA players. You could take the best female basketball players in the world, and they would get wrecked by the male, by like middle ground, like not even like the best male basketball players, but like kind of mediocre professional NBA players, you know. Guys that's not even considered the best. You know what I'm saying? I remember back in high school, I was a part of the grade 8 basketball team when I was in high school, back in the 8th grade. So I was like maybe around 13 or 14 years old. So we were all in grade 8. That was basically, I guess, our version of the freshman year in high school. But that was we were the youngest grade in high school, grade 8. The 8th graders the 8th grade basketball team ended up taking on the grade 9 female basketball team. We took them on. So we were going up against the older female basketball team that was a year ahead of us. They were 1 year ahead of us. They were in grade 9. And it was just a little exhibition match in front of the school, right? We had this little exhibition match, and we absolutely played way better than them. I mean, we dominated them. We absolutely, it wasn't even close. You know, it was like a really one-sided match. The boys, you know, my team was a lot more athletically superior and dominant. We scored more points, we were faster, we moved faster. You know, I remember back in the 7th grade, here's another example that's a little bit more extreme. I was in grade 7. So I was around maybe 12 or 13 years old. And this was elementary school. I was considered one of the stronger kids back then because I was actually, I guess I developed a little bit quicker than the other boys. And so I was kind of like one of the strongest kids in the school, you know what I'm saying, in the elementary school. And so I took on, in an arm wrestling match, one of the female sub-teachers. You know, she was kind of like not a sub, but she was like a fill-in kind of a teacher's aide kind of thing. Like she wasn't like a teacher, but she would hang around the actual teachers. She would be in the classroom along with the teachers and kind of be like a teacher's aide. You know, somebody who was just helping around and kind of be like a pseudo teacher. And she was a younger woman. She was like in her mid-20s, early mid-20s. You know, maybe 25, 26 years old. And I was like 12. You know, I was in grade 7, elementary school. So young kid, young boy, but I was a little bit stronger than the other students. But I was still I was a kid. So we had an arm wrestling match. I took this 25-year-old teacher on, this woman, this grown adult woman in her 20s, and she was taller than me. You know, she was taller than me. She was, you know, she had height over me. She had her arm span was longer than mine. But I easily beat her in an arm wrestling match. We had an arm wrestling match, and she tried, and she was like, "Oh my God, he's strong," and then boom, I basically was able to force her arm down on the table, and I easily beat her in an arm wrestling match. You know, I also took on my male grade 6 teacher. You know what I'm saying? I took him on, and he was obviously a big guy. You know what I'm saying? And he was a male, and he easily beat me because I was just a little kid. But he was a strong, like, male. But I was easily able to beat my female teacher in an arm wrestling match, and she was a grown adult. This was way back when I was in elementary school. Like, this was like 1999, you know? So this was like a long time ago, and I was a smaller kid back then, and it's like, oh my gosh. I was like, yeah, like, I wasn't surprised. You know what I'm saying? When I was able to defeat her in an arm wrestling match, I wasn't, like, shocked. I wasn't like, oh man, like, wow, I can't believe that I was able to overcome this super powerful, you know, female teacher. Yeah, everybody just kind of looked at me like, Vernon, wow, you did it, you know? You got it. I was like, yeah, but I was like, yeah, because she's a woman, she's a girl, you know what I mean? She's a girl. She's a female teacher, she's a female. It wasn't a big deal. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't shocking that I defeated a female teacher in an arm wrestling match as an elementary school student. It wasn't that shocking because, you know, women are just not as strong as men. That's just the way that it is. So, when it comes to athletics, like legitimate athleticism, something like a legitimate sports, yes, men are just more physically impressive. It doesn't mean that women can't achieve something in their own league, in their own right, but it's the men who perform, and thus, usually, you know, like 99% of the time, men make the most money because they happen to perform the best. They got the biggest stats, they got the best statistics, and they achieve the highest scores, and the highest ranking, and all that, and the highest ratings, and so they end up getting the biggest payday. They end up getting paid the most, the highest wages, because men perform the best over females, over women. You know what I'm saying? So that sports and athletics tend to be a male thing. If you actually put women and make them compete against the men, oh man, most women would just have absolutely no chance against the guys. You know what I'm saying? Like, absolutely no chance. So that's just the way that it is. It's biology, it's nature. But then you take on you take wrestling that does require athleticism, but because wrestling is basically scripted and fake, and it's got this narrative about it. It's a very scripted show, kind of like a Game of Thrones, or, you know, soap opera, or anime, or any kind of TV show that has a scripted writing to it, you know, with characters and fictional fake characters. That's fictional fake combat and fake situations. Everything is basically just scripted that way. Well, it's kind of a mixed bag, because when you have a fictional environment like the Marvel Universe, you know, or DC, you know, these comic book superhero movies and characters, like a movie like Wonder Woman, or the Marvel superhero characters like you know, the X-Men female characters, or the female characters in the Avengers, or something like that. You can write the way that these characters, these fictional women, these fictional fake characters are written by. They're written by nerds. They're written by, you know, usually beta male, nerdy guys. You know, these nerdy geeky dudes that was writing comic books back in the day, and they were just creating fictional characters. You know what I'm saying? So they would create a fictional fake character like Peter Parker. Peter Parker is a nerd in the comic books. He's a geeky teenager, right? He's a geeky teen. But he's got these amazing powers. He gets bitten by a radioactive spider, and he has these incredible powers. You know, he can shoot webs. He can make webbings because he's highly intelligent. But he can make fake webbing and kind of use it as. And then he has got that athletic thing where he can climb on walls. He can jump really high. He's incredibly athletic. You know, so it's a very fictional environment. It's like you can have these geeks and these beta male type. Loser type guys like a Peter Parker, skinny, you know, not very athletic, have him be bitten by a radioactive bug, and now all of a sudden he's become this really, really cool, really super strong, super athletic superhero. You know, so the same thing with women. You take a weak, fragile, you know, 5'2" woman that's kind of skinny, and then you give her superpowers in a fictional environment, in a fictional fake written, you know, a fictional comic book, all of a sudden she's like a really super powerful, incredibly super strong, Mary Sue, unstoppable, undefeatable main character. A super heroine. That's like, she can fly in the sky, or she can shoot laser beams from her eyes. She's incredibly, like, it's fiction. Well, the same thing with wrestling. The same thing with wrestling. Professional wrestling like WWE or TNA or all AEW, all Elite Wrestling, or something like that. That's a fictional, fake written characters. You can write Becky Lynch as being very powerful. You can write Ronda Rousey as being powerful. You can write these female wrestlers, these fictional female on-screen, wrestling characters as being even more dominant, or even just as equally, if not even more dominant than the men. You can have Ronda Rousey throwing around all these male security guards, and throw around the referee, these male referees, and have her overpower Triple H at WrestleMania, last year. So you can write these female characters, these female individuals as very powerful characters, even though, again, it's a fictional world. But then you have the athleticism that's required by real world physics. That's, you got to have an actual athletic individual to kind of be able to pull it off. I'm saying, to be able to actually carry that particular match. So I think because wrestling is a fake fictional world, it's a little bit more acceptable to have the women main event WrestleMania this year or any other year, as long as the build-up is right, as long as the storytelling and the momentum is on point. Like Stephanie McMahon said, there's a lot of momentum going into the Becky Lynch, Ronda Rousey WrestleMania match, and there's a lot of there's hype behind it, and they've given a lot of airtime and attention to it, and kind of hyping it up as one of the potential biggest draws of that particular year. They've written it that way. So it's easier to digest it. It's easier to accept it. But I think some people end up conflating, or not conflating, but they end up confusing fictional, fake wrestling with real, legitimate sports. Like, I would be a lot less accepting of something like, let's say, if they forced the women's basketball team to face against the men's basketball team in the NBA Finals. That would be a lot more of an agenda. That would be a lot more like completely bewildering and completely unacceptable. You'd be like, oh my god, like this is happening? They're going to give a token title shot or championship match against the whatever, like the Miami Heat or whoever is the top NBA team at the moment. They're going to make them face off in the NBA Finals against the female team. You know what I'm saying? Like, nobody's going to care about, like, oh my gosh, they're going to get decimated by the male NBA team. You know what I'm saying? Or it's like kind of trying to insert women in the NHL or the NFL. Female players in the MLB, the Major League Baseball League. Just because they got to have a woman in there because it's an agenda. That would be a lot more unacceptable in my opinion, because that's legitimate sports. Or even in MMA, forcing a female fighter to fight against a male fighter. Let's have somebody like who's the champion, Cormier. You know what I'm saying? Daniel Cormier, I think, is the champion. Or somebody like Conor McGregor, have him face against a woman. Oh, just because we got to have a woman in there. We got to have a female fighter going up against a male MMA fighter just because it's women's rights. Well, that's not going to happen. That's not going to work, because the male athlete is going to dominate the female athlete. In a real legitimate thing where they're legitimately trying to defeat the other person, and the men's not going to hold back. The males are not going to hold back. They will absolutely defeat the females in a legitimate athletic event. And I think that's the biggest difference between fake fictional WWE and the wrestling world, the pro wrestling world, and actual legitimate sports, is that wrestling is a lot more fictional based, a lot more comic book style, anime, fictional. It's fake, it's not real. So it's easier. Once again, it's a lot easier to digest the idea that Becky is a cool enough character that is really like kind of a solid, really cool anti-hero, pseudo anti-hero, going up against the evil Ronda Rousey and the annoying evil Charlotte. You know what I'm saying? And these characters, they're written that way. You're supposed to get behind these characters, but because that's the narrative. It's Game of Thrones. That's what it is. It's Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones has become, if I'm not mistaken, Game of Thrones became a lot more feministic, a lot more women-dominated in later seasons, like by season 4, season 5. I'm sure the way that they wrote the later seasons, the women have all become the most powerful characters in the show. You know what I'm saying? So that's it's fiction. They try to cater to the women demographic. They're trying to cater to the female demographic. It's fake. It's fake. It's not real. So I think that's the main difference. But we all know, anybody who's got a rational thinking head, a rational mind that can look at sports and go and kind of separate the two, anybody can go, yeah, we know that men are the superior athlete, but in a fictional fake world like comic books, Wonder Woman and the Avengers and these, strong female characters, something like Catwoman or somebody like that, these are just fake characters. They're just meant to be. It's like filling a role. Whether it's adding sex appeal to the show, whether it's adding a female empowerment or just female represent, not even female empowerment, but female representation in the show. You know what I'm saying? Having that demographic. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's fine overall. I don't really have a big problem with that. I like female wrestling. I'm a fan of indie women's wrestling. Every now and then I'll go download a bunch of like indie female matches, female wrestlers like the Women of Honor and all that, and women's wrestling on the indies, and Priscilla Kelly and Renee Michelle and those other Penelope Ford and all these women in the independent scene. I'm trying to think of other ones. Who's the chicken? Kelly Klein. Women like Kelly Klein and the exotic goddess. What's her name again? The exotic goddess from Ring of Honor, Woman of Honor. Yeah. So there's definitely some entertaining matches involving women. And I'm a fan of it. Some of the women are really hot, so I like that too. I like that beautiful. Looking at having that aesthetic appeal of sexy women and seeing their bodies move and seeing them perform moves and having that just overall, it's very entertaining for me. I like watching that stuff too. It's I like males wrestling or men wrestling and doing their thing. That's cool too. But at the same time, it's a fake fictional thing, and they can arrange a women's wrestling match to be very entertaining too, as long as they can make it entertaining, as long as it can look good on screen. So I don't have a problem with women main eventing WrestleMania 35 at all. This year, what other time are they going to do it? They got Ronda Rousey as a big star. What other options do they have? What other options do they have right now? Brock Lesnar against Seth Rollins? To be honest, I'm sick and tired of seeing Brock Lesnar main event. And close the show. Like every now and then he'll main event, whether it's against Roman Reigns or whoever, and it's like, he's good, but he's been there so many times. He's been main event so many times. It's like, all right, cool. Like, we know what to expect from a Brock Lesnar match. And also, it's Seth Rollins. To be honest with you, I'm not the biggest fan of Seth Rollins. I think he's not that great. I can't stand his voice. He's got kind of an annoying voice, and I don't see him as this incredibly charismatic or interesting character. I'd rather see, I really miss the big stars of the past. Guys like Scott Steiner, guys like The Rock, guys like Stone Cold Steve Austin. I really miss those kind of, really interesting characters. Seth Rollins, I think he's a decent in-ring, high-flying, very dynamic guy, but his personality is lacking. So Seth Rollins against Brock Lesnar, it's not that interesting of a match. It just feels like a fill-in, generic main event. It's not that interesting. To be honest with you, I'd rather see Bobby Lashley against Brock Lesnar. That's a dream match. Now that is a dream match. Two big, just jacked guys, two big muscular, like bruiser, very strong guys going at it, in the middle of the ring, just duking it out. It's kind of like a Broly from Dragon Ball Z going up against like Thanos or something like that, or what's his name, Doomsday from the Superman, the guy who murked Superman back in the early '90s. I think it was Doomsday. Was it Doomsday? Yeah. Like just a big guy, just a really powerful, or the Incredible Hulk. The Incredible Hulk going up against Juggernaut or something like that. Just two big muscle guys, really really powerful MMA, former MMA guys, going at it. They have a legitimate wrestling background, very convincing guys. Very cool characters. Lashley, I was a big fan of Lashley when he was on Impact, TNA Impact champion back in the day. He was incredible. He was he was Black Lesnar, the black version of Brock Lesnar, because he was just this big MMA guy, dominating everybody. And you got, of course, Brock Lesnar. That would be a dream match. And that could main event if they build it up properly. That could have been a main event. But this year they have a boring Seth Rollins. I don't really care. It's not a big deal to me. So yeah, you go with Ronda Rousey, you go with Becky Lynch, you go with Charlotte. It's more. I'm sure that match is going to deliver. It's going to be a really good match, I think, because it's going to have moments. It's going to be athletic. It's going to be exciting. And then WWE overall, I think it's just lacking in stars anyway. If they had bigger stars, like listen, if this was back in the day, if you take Becky, Charlotte, and Ronda, and you put them in the position of the late '90s Attitude Era, they wouldn't main event. They would have a solid spot on the show if they were just as over, just as popular, etc. But they wouldn't main event. It would be Austin against Rock, or Triple H against Rock and Austin or something like that. That would be the main event because it has the biggest stars. It'd be Undertaker against Stone Cold against The Rock or something like that. The real big stars of back in the day. Ronda Rousey's a big star. That's all good, but she would probably be more like in the middle of the WrestleMania card. And that would just be a very different time. The males would it would be very different back then to have athletic women anyway, back in the late '90s Attitude Era, to kind of have that focus. It's just a very different time where women have been given a lot more time to develop and a lot more, on-screen time. So that's it. That's my thoughts on it. I've been rambling for almost 40 minutes, so that's it for this episode of Review Space. Check out the channel for more wrestling-related topics and videos. Subscribe, click on the bell button for the latest notifications, and until next time, peace.